So start record, start stream again. Let's see where we are at. All right. Yeah. So yeah, I remember the Taoism. So
The gripe is basic.
there was a miscommunication, I assume, in that I said, oh, like just
Well,
I
here's the
just want
thing.
to feel good, but it's this eternalism can rip you back into the karmic cycle, which doesn't feel good. So I was like, well, bitch, I don't want to, not feel good. So like, what the fuck, right? Do you see what I'm saying or no?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my angle. I don't want to get
My
ripped back
angle,
into it.
my angle is that because they're pointing out that the symbolic system is the problem, they have an inbuilt aversion to the concept of symbolic systems in general,
Oh,
and this
that's
aversion.
huge.
Hmm?
I don't know if you've articulated it that way before.
No,
In your
it's just coming to
opinion.
me now. Uh, because of that like they have this like aversion to articulation in terms of systemic language in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But and and I've noticed that this comes along with attitudes, like even with our beloved Alan Darren or Darren Allen, forget which
Right,
way.
whichever one.
Uh, damn it! Why does he have to
He's
have
a
two first?
superposition of both. I think
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't.
that's why he's such an enigma.
His parents chose two first names for him. Um,
Well,
anyway,
they had first name for last name. They couldn't help it. It wasn't even their fault.
I know.
Continue.
Anyway, the one sec.
Me too.
Yeah. So the subversion to any kind of symbolic representational
This is the
articulation.
Zen reflex.
Yeah, this entire aversion to it is helpful to some, sure, but what
Um,
it means is that it's like, and this is actually
yeah.
being reflected in their attitudes, is that
Um,
they believe that some people don't even deserve a map. It's like this is exactly what I'm
right.
paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing here, Mr. Allen or Darren or both. He said basically that people who need the map don't deserve to finish the path. And I'm sorry, but like on that front alone,
What
you
about
can kind
bootstrapping?
you can kind of see a lack of compassion, a lack of
Deserve was it?
empathy.
It was phrased like that. Oh man, oh, no.
Yeah,
That's
so I'm pretty like taken back from that position.
man. Wow.
Even more fundamentally, especially because of just little tidbits like that.
Yep.
Um,
What an embarrassment.
because like if you think about it, it's a perplexing position to really take after spending two different books explaining how there's a basic neural implant, essentially in the same way we are saying,
Mm-hmm.
implanted into the mind that we need to overcome to begin with, and then to suggest that any kind of a
Guidance,
helping
direction.
hand, any kind of helping hand is not warranted. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
what?
or disqualifies you from being
Yeah, like
honorable or what?
maybe I'm taking this a
Deserving,
little bit,
worthy.
like maybe this is too literal of a rendering. But I guarantee you, like if I read it this way, right, and
Yeah.
I'm not
You're
typically
not looking
prone.
for that at all.
No, I'm not typically prone to miss uh all the potentiality of something that's being stated. But this is
Right.
the one thing in that book I could not get past. It's like it seems to me that the subversion is inbuilt inbuilt into the framework of just
Interesting.
of the systemic failure of representing all truth.
Yeah, I think you're correct. As the system, Agent Smith itself lashing out as the fundamental system, saying like, well, in an inversion of itself, kind of like if you need that help, you're never gonna get there,
Hmm. And what kind of empathy is that?
right?
That's
Yeah,
where I'm stuck.
right.
That's literally where I'm stuck.
Yeah,
Is
where
that
does it leave? Just kind of drops you off. Like, well, but I think this way. Oh, now, oh, the author told me, so now I'm lost. Like, okay, great
yeah,
outcome.
and you don't have the tools to even realize like anything beyond that. So what's left? And so
Yeah,
it's
it's
this
tough.
aversion to systemic explanations in general that I am fundamentally griping about. You can't, and I think this is the contention against this project as well. And the irony again is that if this is the case, why, Mr. Allen, are you producing books?
Right. Yeah, I was gonna mention that just a sec ago.
Like, why? If
Yeah,
that's the
you
case,
seem to be guiding.
right? But
Yeah.
then to end the guide with, yeah, if you don't know, you will never know, seems to be counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's weird. You're probably like exaggerating a little bit or whatever, but
Well, this is
I hear what you're
first.
saying though, man.
That's the emotional response to
And
it.
credit, though, on the other hand, like we've been kind of raving about this book and like this author. You know, like
Oh yeah,
he's
like
articulating, he's filled in like 100 blanks
yeah.
that we can just scoop it right up and use it, right?
I
But
I
at the
I,
same
I
time, he's failed at some points, which is kind
yes.
of weird-ish.
Yeah, I find that a handful of things uh, perplexing, essentially.
Right.
Perplexing as to like, well, how do you combine this insight with this sort of like heartlessness? Like
Right.
this is where I can't get
Yeah.
over.
Okay, so this is where ideally, you know, um, master and participant or master can be recognized in a situation, and kind of why I encourage you to write a book report. But
I
like
just don't feel like being in school.
he could be presented with such a question, even if you know I go out of my way to link to the timestamp of 8 minutes of this recording, and say, you know, check out the last couple minutes, you know, Darren, these or whatever, and compile like you've said other things too, and you've read it. I haven't. I've read like select pieces of the
Myths.
33 myths, yeah, which I liked them. I
Mm.
liked it's great to have an articulation and just to think about it. It's almost like a statement of fact. It's like
Well,
a
he spends
factual expose of our mythical structure.
he spends a lot of time deconstructing the existent myth and why it's horrible.
Right.
Which I get why you would have a angle like that, but to throw the
Yes,
baby out with the bathwater entirely, that's what
that's
I don't understand from
that's
him.
unfortunate.
It's something that I would not understand from him specifically because uh, it
Why is he talking about it in the first place?
yeah, like it's kind of odd.
Right.
But it's okay. Like that's a personal thing, and then it's supposed. I don't know. Like it is me trying to like wrestle with like a more like a egoic interpretation of it, right? Like as to like what do these words mean and all
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But at the same time, like it's
Right.
it just strikes me. It strikes me as the ultimate failure of those particular paths.
Right.
And I think what I've witnessed is that failure or manifest. The idea that some
Right.
people are
That's what you're
undeserved.
trying to like uh, highlight here is that you
Yeah.
witnessed a failure of what's being described by the book itself in the book itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
which is ironic.
It's mind blowing
Hmm.
to come from such a source. It's mind blowing to have had it come from that level.
So then it's ideally up to conversation. Ideally, again, public conversation.
Well, it shows.
Such as writing a book report, a one page, just like shoot off some quick shit, and
Yeah.
list a few points and be like, hey, I'm calling you out, Darren, on my subreddit. We've got his user ID, like we can call him out on it, and then he
He
can
deleted his
respond.
message, so I don't know who.
I know that's a weird thing too. We didn't bring up yet is that why he deleted his Sods
Because
post.
everybody was an asshole. Did you read how it went?
Except for you and me, yeah, and that doesn't
One
surprise
individual.
me.
Yeah.
We were like, dude, like your book is 33 Miss is awesome. Like we're waiting for this one, like complete fans, right?
Yeah,
But
and then
yes, everybody else. Well, there was one main response, which was like the classic, "Oh, if you're not on LibGen, you're not even like a philosopher, or you're not even an author. You're not a valid author because you're not on this website, right?" Like just complete systemic response, right? Not to the person themselves in the moment, whoever Darren Allen is.
well, again, like let's scale a little bit back. We do respect the individual, and we don't want to throw him under the bus entirely, or at all, really.
No, like that was one of the big. That's why we said it right there.
I it's
This
my
is canon.
strongest it's my
This
strongest response
this
to.
book you've written, sir, is fits right in and is awesome with the kind of work that we need. And thank you for your service. You're on mute again there.
I know.
I see. I'm just notating for the non-audience as I crack another cold one.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Besides that point, I mean, like, I would articulate that there is a discrepancy in our ontological uh, approaches. Again, typical of absolutism in general,
Right.
where he ventured out
But you
to
again, as
explicitly suggest a basic one.
we spoke about this before, though. You did mention that he suggested that this is all to be seen as metaphor or whatever. Like the
Yes.
ultimate caveat was always supplied,
Right.
but yet he
But
never ran with that, so to speak.
not beyond that one absolutism point, which
Right.
which like as a
Exactly.
metaphorical spring well.
It's almost like a thought terminating cliche,
Yeah.
if you know it or have heard that.
Well,
The
we could,
idea that something can just shortcut and roadblock further thought, you can say that as a response. Like,
yes,
okay, well,
and
you know, this nothing. It's a metaphor. It's all just we're not talking
well,
literally here.
so hold on. Let's qualify that again. It, yes and no, because for most people, yes, right. For a very very select few who could actually do non-symbolic, non-guided, non.
Right.
Imagine how many
To
that
use
would
the
be.
map, yes, to go into their own experience using the map.
Yeah, or
Correct.
without being given one by somebody else to sort of.
But you're reading a book, though, right? Like it's presenting something, and you can go there.
No, I'm talking about like mastering self-experience without necessarily having too many words to go by to do it with. How many people are
Right.
like that?
Okay. In general, you're speaking. I thought you were talking about specifically reading Darren Allen's
No,
work. Okay.
no. Yeah, I did say in general. In general, when you like, how many
Okay.
people can you find out on this planet that can just like be told, oh, there's something beyond this, but I'm not gonna tell you what that is, and I'm not gonna tell you anything about
And
how
like
to
for
get
them to
there.
believe it, and then they'll figure it out.
Yeah, and then you're
Right.
supposed to take that at their word, and who are we talking about? It's
Right.
people that have no reference points to any of this, right? Like that's that's where I'm stuck. Like
This is where cultures will have like you
they're
have to
so severed.
walk up the mountain and along the path, and you have to do trials just to speak to the master, and all he does is just tell you that this isn't what you think it is, and then you believe it, right? And then you
Yeah.
meditate for how long?
Like imagine how far removed this culture is from that kind of ability.
We don't have that.
Exactly.
That's
So
removed.
so why bother venturing out to even suggest it? Like why? What's the point?
Yep. And your
What
question is
what are you
what's
trying to
triggering people to actually come out and play? Almost nothing is the answer. Practically nothing.
right? And we're talking about people who need to be healed, if you will, from a sense of
Right.
from a layer.
And
There's a
yet that
cystic layer.
itself doesn't trigger it, except in extreme cases, and that's where you get the exploration,
Yeah,
which
and
is
so you get these
tragic in a way.
so you get either these opinion of like, oh yeah, by the way, this is all pointless, which is what effectively this is what that's what I felt the book ended with, that a resignation, if you will, that this is impossible, it will never happen, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
No middle ground.
So what's your response? He actually says like what, like the nihilistic take or on
Uh, not
like
nihilistic as much as defeatist.
like is he in your opinion, in your uh,
He
like
sees no
interpretation, is he
he
making a statement about society overall, like civilization, like the overall?
that it is never going to change
It's
back into
exactly, yeah,
yeah.
that okay.
And okay, and this is not too far from our position, but not it's entirely congruent with it. Because
That puts the cherry on top of this little complaint that we have, though, which just says that yes, this is not a complete treatment of the subject.
right, uh, yeah, because it's congruent with our assessment in that there's a plateau you're sitting on. There's a plateau which you have to spring off of to do it. But to completely eliminate the possibility to one sec.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's completely eliminated the possibility from the actual reader, um, say from the very few specific people who already are.
Wait, hold on. The ability to eliminate the possibility, to shut off potentiality, is a symptom of that eternalistic truthism, whatever you call it.
Okay, how do you see that?
Um, just the ability to say, okay, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? The ability to rest on a conclusion like that is the same symptom as another symptom, which
Oh,
is,
okay, okay. A
right?
parallel, in a parallel
Yeah,
of one that says that things are in an absolute state.
exactly.
Yeah, instead of in the flux of potentiality.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, just let it
Also,
sink in. Let it sink in.
uh, it also speaks to a lack of imagination.
Well, that's the thought terminating cliche. It kills imagination, potentiality. This is the danger of the mind, to close off what is possible.
Yeah. Again, because of the subject matter and because of the author involved, I just found it so jarring
Yeah,
as a conclude as one
because
as
we
one of the
love
subject.
Darren Allen, like we love the myths. That
Yeah.
shit's canon.
Yeah, and the failure is the way I would articulate it. Is just essentially it's talking about the need to remove the incorrect mythology that is in place, the market machine that is in place that's at the heart
And
of it
it'll
all.
never happen, kind of thing.
And instead of
Whereas we
and
would talk about
and
integrating.
saying and instead of saying that we need a new mythology, that is actually capable of tackling the situation.
Yeah.
He's saying that we just need to get rid of the mythology, and then
Ooh, and
nothing
but
left.
not replace it.
Yeah, like give nothing. Like there's no
Okay,
articulation
so
back into my head.
we can actually put this in the category of classic critical theory, from my in perspective or understanding, in that you can say what like you can cut and chop everything down and just say, oh, you don't need this, you don't need this, because it's all literally absurd.
Yeah,
See what I'm saying? Anything,
literally.
literally anything can be broken down. That's what critical theory cuts. If you don't replace it with God knows what, then you have
Right,
nothing.
right. So, in other words, you've taken qualia out, you've reduced to quantity, and then you've stated that the layer above where qualia came from into quantity doesn't exist.
Right. Right.
And
Like
you
there's no
and you
reason
and
for what was
right,
there.
and you enforce
The
that, and
baby
you
with the
enforce that,
bathwater.
right, and you enforce that by never articulating the patterns of that upper layer again. Just regardless of whether they
Mhm.
are congruent with something else or not, resonant with something else or not, which is the whole point. The resonation is the point. Why do things go into
Right.
operators? They resonate in the protocols, right? With something else, something else, and something
Yep.
else. This is why it feels like meaning comes from top down, because you're jumping into it
Right.
from the bottom.
It's easy not to see that the codependent arising or whatever you call it.
Right. And in every layer, there's that horizontal fiat resonance stacking elements going on, into which you're convergently evolving with all other stacks, right? To occupy the
Yep.
available probability spaces in the upper layers of resonance. The
Right.
resonance continues, the resonance builds up, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And no matter how many times you jump upwards, it's always going to feel like the
And
purpose comes from above, because you're jumping into it.
And the interesting part about this is there is something very stable about this, and it's perception mechanics, which come from this body and brain and organs and all that we inhabit, being capable of representing this to us.
Mm-hmm.
And even if
And
the lower
re-represent
layers get
and
completely
re-represent.
crippled, you can be there on the last day to perceive it. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
there for now, right? And this is
Mhm.
something precious to be protected and guarded.
It's something. It's the only thing, if you will. Uh, like the entire question of existence is moot. It's because, like, if we ever talk about anything to be existent, it's going to be about these interactions, as they are the only thing that ever pops
Right.
up
Correct.
into existence,
This
if
is
you
the bootstrapping into the
will. And
virtual machine or whatever you
yeah,
call it.
but we see the same phenomena with particles. They're just virtual particles pop into existence and out of existence, and blah blah
Right.
blah.
And this is the stacking model, the holonic stack model.
Yeah. Hmm.
You just see that everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
like quantum foam almost.
Mm.
From the perspective of any layer, whatever's above it is just like this foam bubbling up.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
know what it
Sure.
is, but it's true. It's things actually emerging, right?
Yeah. Well, things is a weird qualifier here, because
Right.
it's not things that are emerging. It's expressions.
Holons.
It's expressions
Right.
that may mean nothing. May be noise in one
Oh
context,
yes, yes, yes.
and
In the pure potential sense, yes. But what we're looking at as the thing that is stacking is the holon,
right.
right?
Those are the
You're
so things
seeing
only
this
stack.
pattern, this fundamental pattern keeps repeating
Yeah, this is
in
why
our
we use
model.
the word. This is where
The
we use the word perspective to capture a section of the phenomena. When you have a perspective, you are actually seeing them as stacks, specific, concrete stacks,
right
right, rather than an abstract idea of stacking.
perspectives.
Yeah, perspective is like sectioning off the whole into a small little bubble, and saying and namespacing it basically to
Yep.
say, okay, this is the kind of basically defining the subject that sees it.
Yes, you need to speak a language about this, and you establish what is a valid language for this, and then you proceed to speak it.
AKA domain.
Right.
And
Namespace.
we already have the computation guild for that.
A what
In
guild?
fact, the computation guild is all about this. You remember
Oh,
that
oh yeah.
subject,
Oh man, that was a while ago.
right?
We've been through so much.
Yes, but this is that.
Computation.
This is still that. Then there's nothing's changing.
Correct. Yep.
Because when you do that, when you create the language, that's actually that activity of that guild. That's what they do.
This again reminds me that we need to really, like, as I said in the last recording, storyboard. All of the different scenarios and cases and things that happen within the guild. We need to storyboard them, because right now we're just articulating off the top of our head in a dev meeting that probably won't be listened to too many times. Right, but the actual thing, I think the product out of this would be to storyboard the experience of a participant in all different parts, to the participant viewed going through all different parts of the model, the academy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you storyboard, you write down specifically what happens, and then what happens, and then what happens. So we're forced to think into that zone instead of just riding and surfing on the surface of it, right?
Okay, so augment this with my process that I was mentioning earlier. Instead of simply storyboarding it, now let's use the dashboard mentally. Let's mentally use it.
Yeah.
We have conversation as the medium to throw sound bites
Correct.
at each other.
And you did do something on not, it wasn't live, but it was recorded to YouTube, which we didn't do too much of, if have ever, which is to orally articulate a dashboard mind map for the audience.
Okay, yeah.
Which we did. We literally did that. We got like a couple frames out of it, right?
Cool. Yeah.
Good job. So I agree, like, use the dashboard. And this is what I meant by do the meditation. Like, so we should be meditating right now. Yes, that's what
this
looks like.
This is going to be the feedback observation method in and of itself. It's not going to be different from it.
Right.
Because if you look at it again, a statement has been put out. The answers to that statement like created this whole cloud of like things,
Right.
blah 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 blah.
Correct.
Which come back as conversations, which come back as more clouds, and on top of that, now we have heuristics developing through that action in terms of schemas. And as those schemas get more and more articulated, they eventually are going to take the shape of the quote unquote the ultimate schema, which is the meta scheduling. So then we're going to converge into that schema.
And by meta schedule, you're kind of referencing basically what I've been talking about.
The needle on the vinyl, right? So if you play a note, the next note is selected by playing that note.
Yeah, but I guess like the deck schema chart that we had up. I don't know. Anyways.
Give me a second.
Yep.
Okay, be right back.
Me as well. come back online. Here we are. We are now unmuted and completely offensive to all the senses.
Yes, yes.
As
God
usual.
forbid. God forbid we do anything human on screen. We can't
Yep.
have that.
You know what? I will never again apologize for burping. In fact, I will insist that nobody forgive me or excuse me, as it were.
All right. Okay. And I will always eat a burrito first thing. Always.
The traditional chomp.
Yeah. I can't believe that this was like
Chomp smack.
somebody took the time to actually not only watch us do it, right? But to elaborate on the sad state of affairs of the subreddit, to which but pretty much is nothing but at this point nothing but rejected us as their own members.
Right.
We're only there because hey, we're kind of clingy.
Can't get rid of.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
the irony.
We've always had in our work it's I don't know, always been opposition, just almost never. And I don't know if that's how maybe we especially initially presented things in raw and like just hard to digest ways and like offensive, and then it kind of got caught up. Like you start to recognize, like this is expected human behavior. You recognize something you didn't like once, well, you probably don't like it the next time, right?
Well,
And so it's like habits.
It's like saying that if I said it, the thing I'm going to say is going to be exactly the
Yes.
same I said before.
It doesn't
Which is
matter
stupid.
what comes out of your mouth.
Yeah,
It could be the most truthful thing ever spoken, which that person may know about. But if it's said by you, that's a complete change.
And you know what? That this is sad.
It's
Like,
expected though. This is
Right, no,
entropy,
that's-
energy conservation.
Right. No, this is
basically.
sad. Is like that's why I've started off with. It's sad
It's as
in and of
yeah,
itself, but not
Yeah.
like but not but not alien. It's not
right.
like
Yeah.
you're saying, an energy.
Right, that's a good comment. It is completely a part of what anybody could understand. We understand why.
And
that
it
would
ties
be.
into the inability to distinguish between vision and solipsism.
Vision?
Like have a vision, like the vision of the moment, if you will. Like you can't distinguish any reference
Okay, I see what you
to
say.
it.
Yeah.
from solipsism.
Right.
Especially if you're caught up in egoic comparisons,
Right.
and aka if you're looking for an abstraction, if you're looking for a commodity to siphon out of it.
Right.
This is the same way as asking a
Yes.
question. The stupidest question that I used to ask. What is the meaning of
So,
this song? What is the
we
meaning?
are basically dealing with
those are the ideas.
we're dealing with the implant, the crystal, not the crystal implant, but the chip implant.
Yeah, which is incapable of using axioms to see truth in the layer that's hovering inside of its system, but beyond its completion.
Right.
Right. So the incompleteness
Yes,
theorem,
which it
pops
always
out
will be.
there.
And
This is where it pops up.
This gives me an interesting view of uncertainty as the most fundamental archetype, right?
As it should. Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
Like you said,
picturing
yeah.
uncertainty as absurd, and then I'm like, wait, that's wrong. It's the wrong combination, and then I'm like, oh, right, yes, the bottom of the
Right.
bottom of the base, the bottom of the base.
Mm-hmm. So it's no wonder why that has to be part of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just build out into some idealistic space that doesn't contain or account for or understand that archetype. It'll be categorically ungrounded.
You just need to have that symbol appear in a constellation of symbols that map to the context.
So fundamental guilds.
Yeah, that would apply,
You
yes.
pull it in through that always. That's the academy, that's where you learn from. It's always available. Every member is a purveyor of fundamental guild.
I think that's the. I think that would be like the what you would call like the fundamental baseline qualia that you need to bring to the picture, the artifact, if you will, of the model, to make use of, to guide quantification into the correct channels, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? To dissipate the energy into the correct spectrum of lightning bolts.
Right? Yeah, and you just
Like
said two separate sides of the loop, one up, one down.
The correct being from a perspective of isomorphism, not from like an ideological sense, but are the layers mapping to each other? So if we're talking
Right.
so the ideology would be to make it isomorphic between the layers themselves, and the argument would be to since those layers articulate everything that is relevant to begin with. So it's kind of like a self-perpetuating circular argument.
Yeah.
In the same way, I am, therefore I think, and I think, therefore I am. Both statements are, by the way, true. And only true because they're stated. There's no other reason for their truth. There's no rational reason behind the truth. This is the break between rationality and truth. I think, therefore I am is still true. However, it's not rational. It doesn't spring from a causal element. There's nothing underneath the layers from the axioms to build it up. It simply happens because the system is the way it is, or the incomplete system.
It sure feels complete, though.
Right, because
therefore,
right, it's an immediately true system, which is why it's a natural system and it grows from itself as a seed, which is why it feels like a source, an I, and a reality. But ontology, it's not. It's a mirage. Different conversation, but this is the same mirage I keep griping about with the other systems of thought.
You'd think those statements would be kind of easy to pick out and like try to ground the statement, like in the moment of when it's stated. I don't know. Like, what do you do about that?
Again, it's the inability for the aversion for systemizing causality beyond that horizon, right? Since systemizing everything in the horizon causes problems for us, this aversion to systemizing anything beyond the horizon, aka we cannot talk about the ineffable, you don't deserve a map, all of that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, I see that. That's a whole point in itself. That could be an entire chapter of something.
Yeah. That's
point noted.
My strong feelings against all of this. Like, I mean, they're definitely egoic in nature. They're definitely measuring. It's a measurement of value, if you will. I'm systemizing by in this approach. But again, I have to insist. Nature is itself a system, one way or another. One that we can capture or one we cannot is a different matter. The correct assessment is that yes, we cannot capture the full totality of it.
This is a self-reference question of, is my own nature a system? Getting back to like the neural OS layers and all that.
And the reason you can never arrive at a proper answer is because no matter how many axioms you throw at the system, The statement "I am not provable within the system" will
Right.
still arise.
Yeah, that's correct. You're kind of dropped into something, and you can only, well, to an extent, you can do meditations to perceive through the neural OS layers, for example, right?
Yes.
But there's a certain point at which it cuts off through the artifacts. That's just what it is.
Yes. And you have to understand that the artifacts, aka axioms, aka anything you can build symbolic representation out of, anything, will never arrive at the truth of "I am,"
Right.
"I cannot be proved in this system." All of those statements, all of those statements, while will have absolute effects on the system by being able to be processed by it,
Yeah. So what you're
like that,
saying there is basically every new layer comes with its own new set of rules and potentials.
yeah, and every one of them
Like
can build an "I am."
at its
Every
basic most
single
point,
one of
that's what I think that what that says.
them. So, and every single one of them builds an "I am," and I think that this is the mirage that so many people are focused on the source. "I am, I am, I am." There's always an "I." There's always an "I." Yes, yes, but it never is the same thing at all times. Like
Right.
it's like a lake shimmering the moonlight,
Yeah.
and the moon is not even a thing out there. It's
We
just a
have
lake.
memories though. And we know that something is continuing through space and time.
Right, but that's just like an memories as an experience that appears in the moment. It's never an
Maybe
actual
the
thing.
maybe Earth and people don't exist, and the moment is just the most random ass mathematical coincidence that
Are we talking about
some
words?
that something that something existed with a thought that you have in your head right now.
Right. Well, that's solipsism. That's again. It's again
Right.
assigning. It's again. It's assigning reality to symbology, and
A way of
from
completely disconnecting.
yeah, and become and looking at things extremely superstitiously. Right? Because the
Right.
words,
Yeah.
yes, the words are there, the representation are there, and whatever is being represented is there. However, to confuse, to conflate, to mistake one for another is where all the errors spring up. And the reason they keep
Oh
springing
yeah.
up is because there's an encouragement to confuse and conflate, specifically. Uh, to get metaphors
Encouragement.
wrong, to get metaphors wrong,
So
particularly mistake metaphor for reality.
we haven't talked about the chip implant, which is like the
Ego.
sure, yeah, and the like right, the ongoing accumulation of through the plateaus of commodification of a being, which is
Pathos and reward and punishment systems
injected through
built on them.
education,
Yes.
right? It's all, yeah, reward and punishment, of course. The main levers of control, if you will. Um, yeah, I forget where I was going with that, but like, yeah,
How dare you?
I think
Yeah, I know. Happens to me all the time.
I think
Yeah.
it'll come back.
Yeah. No, that's fine. What I want to like sort of probably more hone in on is like if you imagine what I keep referring to is with the incompleteness theorem and why that's so tenacious over here. And how
Yeah.
do you get two layers out of there instead of one? So as the system expands mathematically, right, in terms of its complexity
Right.
and its rule sets and all of those different things, it will have a certain set of what's called axioms,
But
aka
wait,
certain patterns that are givens.
doesn't this
As-
happen already before it even becomes a very complex system?
yes, yes. We're just saying what happens when you take that system's complexity to the max, to the extreme.
Yeah.
So axioms would be the expressions given to it by its lower layer, right? So atoms are given to molecules, for example, right?
Right. Yeah.
Atomic interactions are given to chemistry. So these are axioms. You can't you, and then
Right.
the molecules will be like all the different variations of these rules. This chemical, that chemical, the next chemical. So we only have like 100 and so on elements, but we have like thousands, if not millions, if not billions of chemicals.
Right.
Right? Elements versus chemicals is a huge discrepancy.
Correct.
And so
those are the layers.
yes.
Right.
Forgot the context again. So what was I saying just before that?
Incompleteness theorem.
Right, and we're trying to see how two layers become one. From one layer becomes two. So you have all these different builds, right? And you can imagine all the different kinds of molecules appearing in the context of atoms, right? From the rule sets, right?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about emergence out of the kind of chaos of the static noise into things which somehow support each other at a new layer.
Yeah. You have all these different givens. All of the different ways you can construct all, right? And so you get these different sets of molecules. And now all of a sudden imagine a molecule appears in this set that cannot be arrived at by following any of the different combinatory rules that you have. So we're arriving at the macro molecule, basically. Because the rules only build you like the pieces of the macro molecules. They don't tell you how those things
right, yeah.
interact.
You're talking about like a most basic set of things that can happen, almost like a schema, a catalog, right?
Yeah.
For that, and then you're talking about extending it beyond. That extending is the next layering up.
Right. So all of a sudden you have this macro molecule that behaves on its own, according to its own rules, structures its own machinery, right? None of which is fundamental to the rules of the thing, but those rules are getting patterned in such a combination, in such a mechanical spatial construction that in a chain reaction, another layer of effects happens. In another chain reaction, and one more phenomena that never was predicted before happens, and so on and so forth. And this is that break of causality, where you cannot simply predict the macro from the micro.
Right. Like in a petri dish, even, kind of.
Right. And not to mention that the micro and macro still interact directly because one is the other.
Yeah, like
And
you don't
so
sit there watching
the perpetuating in the macro
atoms.
and the perpetuation in the macro are so out of whack compared to what you see in the micro.
Right.
Just can't follow.
So we're talking about observing a carrier for signals, and we have different agents for that depending on different carriers. And if we have the right one, we're going to see what's going on.
What's going on? What?
I don't know. I kind of like tried to bring in the language metaphor of like being able to perceive carrier interaction and language on something that's happening.
And right. And all of a sudden you get such a payload of all the things that you already have, but in patterns. They're patterns. And that pattern does not speak to you whatsoever from the perspective of the rule set, right? The pattern is the pattern uses the rule set, but it doesn't speak to anything in the rule set itself, right? And that pattern manifests itself as an expression for the atom of the next layer, imperceivable to the original.
Yeah, of course.
And this is the statement I am. it's a completely valid statement, but you can never express it. It expresses things, but you can never express it. It
Correct.
expresses things, but
Yeah.
you can't express it.
Because
It
you're
doesn't.
talking about a specific subset within the neural operating system of representing via mind map some phenomena
Yeah.
experienced.
Now think about this and the idea of having a higher purpose,
Correct.
right? You can't express it, and it keeps expressing down, right? There's that impenetrable sort of
Yep.
upward motion, and yet the insight is specific. Like, not that I have it or whatever, but the insight would be essentially is that like that top down again, very varying from the layer above it, that is patterning everything, right? And so you can perceive it as as an other, you can perceive it as a self, you can perceive it as
Mm-hmm.
a source, you can perceive it as a
Yeah.
God, whatever, and you shouldn't perceive it as anything except yet another layer, yet another layer, yet another layer, yet another layer,
Right.
and so above and below actually should not actually like be ontological. They should
Right.
not exist in a framework. So yes,
Yeah.
against the system, but not against the system at the same time.
It feels to me like not favoring anything in particular, but like
Right.
still paying attention,
Right.
doing feedback and whatnot.
Precisely that. And hanging on to any of those layers as an absolute is the mistake. That's why there can never be an actual hierarchy, as we got loops going on,
Mm-hmm.
inversions and conversions. You're green right now, by the way.
Yep. I'm green.
Yeah,
Oh, you
you
can
have like a green highlight.
take a screenshot. I can't see myself.
That's okay. I'm too lazy,
Bloopers
and
reel.
I don't feel like learning Windows right now.
The blooper reel. I
Yeah.
look, well, from my, I like, there's an orange background. For sure, that's probably.
No, I don't see it.
Oh, you have the, right. The Toad.
Yep.
Toad sings Portal Mountain Anthem.
Mm-hmm.
Da da dun dun da. Da 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 dun da.
What, you don't
Da
want to
da da
make it a
dun
military
dun
march?
da 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 dun da dun da da.
It's got to be a military march, man.
Something like that. We can adapt.
Do you like a perfect circle?
Sure. We know.
There's a count bodies like sheep song to the rhythm of the war drum. It's got like a marchy sort of feel
Count
to it.
bodies like sheep in your dreams while you
Count
sleep.
bodies like sheep in the rhythm of the war drum.
Damn.
Don't fret, precious, I'm here. Step away from the window. I'll keep you safe inside.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a good song.
Cool.
Anyway,
Nice.
where were we?
We were, just recording about molecules and layering.
Right. So we've gotten to the part where we've got all the rules being utilized for some pattern that the rules don't speak to or cannot speak about,
Right.
and then
Which
that
happens
creates
at every layer, literally.
yeah,
They
and
don't know
then
why they keep getting pattern from above, but it's just the system, or it's kind of like,
this is where you get convergent evolution type of theory for from our perspective, where there's certain slots in the upper layer that are more probable than others, right? So the more complexity it is, the more
right,
pressure there is to conform to
correct.
very narrow set of shapes. And this
I've
is
thought of
the
this.
consolidation.
I've thought of this as archetypes coming up through below, like a
Yeah,
stream of archetypes, and
sure.
that seems
It's the
kind of weird, but
consolidation.
It should have like a dynamic feel to
But
it
think
of
about it. Okay,
what's being passed up is has a shape to it. It's not just anything.
right. So this is the consolidation and the
Right.
phenomena where you consolidate
Yes.
into a
And
few forms
that layer only
into the few
exists.
archetypes,
Yep.
and then the archetypes spring out again, and then again and then we see this in the person and the corporate and the state archetypes,
Right.
uh, doing exactly that. They consolidate into, and then it spring
And
out into their own set again.
is it really such a hard sell that this model is reflective of what is happening and has happened?
The more we
Is
make
it
the particle
really a,
metaphor, the more we combine it with the particle metaphor, the better chance we have.
what, a quantum mechanics?
Yeah. The more we have a
At each
standard
layer,
model.
do you see
Yes.
that? Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So the more we have a standard model, the more we have perception mechanics, the more we have, all of these little words we chose
Yep.
for marketing purposes.
Oh, yes.
The closer we get to those ideals, right? Externally, the closer we have a chance to being passed off as um, idle entertainment
Right.
from the top,
We've talked about this quite a bit lately.
and let through the permeable, if you will, membrane of the.
All right. We are just, we are a for-profit venture, enterprise, if you will.
For passive entertainment and self-help.
All right. We expect to make money.
How else are we going to maintain the shelter?
Right.
How,
Yeah,
how else?
like a cool building and like franchises and that spreading
Hmm.
out.
And the workforce
Yeah.
that will vouch for, contribute to, and
Right. It's big visions. So I'm seeing like what we just talked about in at least the first half of this whole thing about like the deck schema and all that, and getting towards that product of a facilitation of the guild. So that's my main constraint is I want what it looks like to facilitate the guild using mind mapping cognitive technology, pen and
okay.
paper, whatever you've got, it doesn't matter. But anyways, this to
So
me is
from
the
the
dashboard which comes out,
which
but it
which
has
comes out of the
different flavors and layers. The dashboard is a fundamental thing which you build upon. So what I've been probably showing you or telling you sometimes seems like it's away from the dashboard, but it's just a layer or two above, built
or
upon it,
a
right?
reiteration of those layers in
Like
addition to
I
them.
assume the dashboard is being used, that we are seeing conversations happen and things getting filtered up.
Yeah, and I'm just telling you like the smallest constraints that are involved, so that when you carry up onto the next layer, you can already assume, oh, this interaction is going on internally,
Right.
right? Queries,
Okay, so
possibilities,
this is
more
the
queries, more possibilities.
TypeScript structure, right? Don't you have like
So
a
what we would
layered,
do,
like a bubble inside a bubble of
here's what we would
things?
do. Here's what we would do. We would start from the object, so the construct of the message, right? And then create a type out of that to reflect posts and or classes or whatever. So now you take the template of the archetype of the message. You create archetype of the class of the message. So take the object, create a class out of it, expand on
So
the class, create
okay,
interface out of it,
I'm glad you
and
brought this up because um, you have been programming for many decades, and I have hated programming for a long time. But
for many decades.
for many decades, this last year, I decided to voluntarily, learn it again and make a program. Um,
You've done well. Like
so
I like the way you tackled
it kind of, I just want to highlight a kind of
it. You've grown up.
disadvantage. Thank you. A disadvantage, I guess, in that um, I know that what we're talking about with the deck schema, it's in the in the zone of programming. because we
Mhm.
brought it that far that what we're doing is programming reality by having a hyperstitious object set, which is the dashboard, which is constantly showering down hyperstitions onto your reality itself into the commitment record,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, so like, what was I talking about?
Uh,
Like, that's it, isn't it?
yeah. That's like. Yeah. There's
You
like.
want a cognitive technology for hyperstitionally programming your own reality, a
Yeah.
programming environment.
You're reiterating what I'm trying to constantly reinforce in the way I keep reanalyzing it.
Yeah, I expect. I don't think many people understand or can, like, you almost need like many different layers and different interpretations, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think this is
So
great to record it.
outside
So,
of the bootstrap, which is supposed to be actually implicit, right? The bootstrap itself is supposed to be an implicit thing. You actually have to build up an entire membership, an entire mediation, and an entire collection of association guilds that utilize the former two, in a comprehensive overlay, right?
mm-hmm.
Like imagine just how much is implicit in that from the
Yeah,
top, like
without
from the
even
surface
saying
area.
what the things that haven't been said to fill
Yeah,
in the
like
blanks of to make that actually work.
especially if you're accessing that system from your respective associated places.
Yep, I suspect it's very rare to take this pursuit based on the typical response.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, this is reflective in the mediation guilds in that uh, the climb into that sort of space, it takes effort, right? Most people will be happily stagnate somewhere in the lower tiers. Um, by stagnate, I don't mean like necessarily like um, stagnate in the tier, but stagnate in terms of elaborating on top of it, creating
Well,
a more useful layer, more
this
useful.
again reminds me of
And the usefulness is in relation to the commodities.
this reminds me of being born with a chip in your brain, and that through the education system, a whole set of just behaviors and identity is all wrapped up, which is like
Is working.
not good for this process. Like, it almost has to be illuminated. In other words,
Sorry,
the critical
what is
theory.
not good? What's not good? I
Just
missed a
the
bit.
uh, being educated with this chip to facilitate whatever the brain chip. Um,
Ego?
there, so what I'm saying is, like,
The
in a
market
natural,
system
let's
implant?
say, take tribal environment, you're not going to have this, but in modern ones, there's something through education that is implanted, which actually hinders your ability to do what we're talking about.
Right.
Like, it's literally
What's
anti
implanted?
that.
What's implanted is the obsession over axiomatic, what do you call it? Derivation of, like, to only follow the from axiom to theorem,
It's kind of like a
like
top down only approach.
to limit, no, bottom up only.
Oh, yeah?
And the bottom up, what did we? Here's the problem with the bottom up, the reductionist approach. You can never build up the top layer from below it because it becomes meaningless to it. This is why
Right?
you can't derive the meaning of life from mathematics, for example. Right? Like that's not a conversation you can even have. The words, the meanings behind the words, the implications behind the words will never point to anything useful. or relatable or
Mm-hmm.
experiential, because the abstractions are in a completely different realm.
Yep.
So the world of mathematics cannot present to you what love is. The world of
Right.
chemistry cannot present to you what love is, despite some claims of serotonin or whatever, or dopamine or
Yes.
whatever the hell you fucking want to
Yeah.
call it. That's
This
not
is
love.
the great divide, if you will, or whatever. You know.
Hmm. So yeah, like that's the disconnect, that the lower, you can never reach the top layer from the lower layer as is. The realization must come from the fact that statements arise as truths in the lower layer by being stated. Where do they quote unquote come from? The hyperstitious upper layer, if you will.
Yeah.
They don't come from
There's
anywhere. It's just a
no
layer that's there.
there's no linear path to where it
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah, that layer is there. It has a probability of statements occurring
Right.
within it.
And again,
They
this is between
stand
every
to
layer. You'll see
occur.
this kind of
Yes, convergent.
horizon.
That's a convergent evolution phenomena, which is why all of the time, whenever you see these layers appear in one domain and in another domain and in the third domain and in the fourth domain, they all start to actually resonate with each other still, because they are coming from the same set of probabilities of the upper layer. They still communicate, and they also share mediums, depending on where that medium lands in the layers, but they still share
Hmm.
them,
Of course.
right? So there's that, horizontal and the vertical, again, isomorphisms. Convergent evolution is simply a metaphor for the potential landscape. You know, like the electron has the electron cloud, and where it's thickest, that's where you're most probably going to
Right.
find it. So imagine the quote unquote next layer built out of the negative space, if you will, from the previous layer, aka the places where theorems cannot touch, right? The places where you can't get to
Hmm.
mechanically from by rules. As you keep using the
Yeah.
rule to get from one place to the next,
Assuming
you
you've
just can't
modeled
get
that
there.
layer correctly. Yeah, that's another
Assuming that
factor. But yes.
yeah, assuming that's the system, so you can't reach that. That layer forms, so you can metaphorically look at it as a layer coming from above, because it keeps patterning things in the exact same space. Um, so while there is a layer, there is no layer. It's in the same
Word.
system,
And yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
that aspect of it keeps getting more and more complex in a way that none of the layers understand, and each layer has that limit in which, when it reaches that, it becomes patterned by the next phase and the next phase and the next. And so we're still talking about the same system, but it's incapable of referencing everything within itself at all. It's disconnected. It's loopy. It's
Well,
mergy. It's
and you're having
fluid.
agents probably on many different, focusing at many different points too,
Oh
which
yeah,
can or
overlaying
can't
like different
communicate
aspects
well.
of it. And the more sophisticated an agent is, it's the more layers it can go from the top to the bottom, right? At each point, there's a more sophisticated capacity for
Right.
agents, and each and each
Yes.
and the more isomorphic an agent is the more the agent that is capable of taking us way back down to the initial
Right.
places.
So the agent speaks in the language of its carrier where it is in its place, and yet it also says things that are specifically
About the
coherent
carrier,
with the language of some layers below.
yeah. And the further below, the better. However, three is the necessary limit. In
That's
fact,
weird.
and well, the
Are you
three
like
is,
superstitious or what?
no. It's got to do with the domain. It's got to do with computation, neuro, uh, intelligence. What did I call it? Sentient.
Sentient machine.
Yeah, it's got, so we have
Synthetic neurological
synthetic
computation.
computation and sage shape. Those three layers that I'm talking about. We
Right.
need those three depths, because once you get
Right.
to the third
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
starts to repeat. It starts
Here's
to
another
repeat and then integrate it.
heuristic of the model. You can't just forget that some other layers above don't exist.
Hmm.
That's correct.
That's the entire denial of God kind of idea, and it's also false, flawed in its essence. It denies the top layer in general, which is an objectivistic problem.
Damn.
A subjectivistic solipsism is to create that next layer and then say only it exists, and then cut off everything from below it. Which is
Damn.
just as stupid.
Correct. Yep.
They're both fundamentally cut off.
Typical misapplication. Unfortunately. Hey, buddy. I was just thinking, like, I could still chill for like another hour plus, but if you want to like take your kids, to the park,
Yeah.
it's sunny now. Like,
Yeah, I
I
was
was
thinking about
thinking
ending it about here.
it's gonna go
Uh,
down. Yep, the sun will be gone and she'll be gone. But she's
yeah,
nice
man.
out, and it was a pleasure. Completely awesome. I'm satisfied. I'll say that.
Cool, 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 cool.
Yep.
Does
I'm
that give you
happy.
enough to like go on an actual game yet? Are
Uh,
you?
no, but I feel like we've progressed greatly to
Mm,
that direction. And I will do like my own stuff,
hmm.
in my free time.
You
We'll
bastard.
reconvene.
Hmm.
Do you know, maybe next week we could do like in shop, or don't know yet,
Yeah.
or just
Let's
up in the air
play
schedule.
by ear, because my wife's schedule is kind of like being messed
Yeah,
with this week.
I hear you, and fully appreciate the sacrifice.
Yeah, man. Talk to
And
you soon.
yeah, we'll stop it here. Cheers, buddy.
Yep.